Hello, my name is Sean Briscoe, and this presentation is an introduction to policy debate. I suppose the first thing I ought to do is just tell you a little bit about who I am. To be quite honest, I arrived at the point where I am today unwillingly. When I was in high school, my speech and debate program was so large that you had to be invited onto the team. And our forensics team had speech, debate, and interpretation of literature. And when you received an invitation, you were invited onto one of those three aspects of the team. Throughout middle school, I had been in a number of plays and small productions in the church, community, and things like that, and that's what I really wanted to do. So I was looking forward to being on the squad for interpretation of literature. And well, over the summer, before my freshman year, I received a letter in the mail, and the return address on it was at my high school, and it said the forensics team. So I knew what that letter was, and I was really excited. And I opened it up, and I saw the debate coach's name at the bottom. I'd been invited onto the debate team, not the interpretation of literature side of things, and I was pretty upset. I actually wasn't going to join the team, but after some persuasion from my parents, maybe a little bit of directive, I was more or less forced onto the team, and the way that they couched it was, if you read the letter, it says that after your first year on the team, if you want to move into a different aspect or you want to do more than one, you're absolutely welcome to do that. And so I thought, okay, fine, I will toil away, bide my time until I can actually do what I really want to do. Well, to make a long story short, by the second tournament of the year, I was hooked on debate, and I never looked back. I did debate all through high school. I did debate all through college. While I was in the Air Force on active duty serving as an officer, I volunteered with high school debate teams, and then I decided to make it a career after 6 years in the Air Force. And what I found is that this activity is a ton of fun, and it also does so much to prepare you for life, for a career, for college, anything that you want to do in life. Debate helps you to get there. But originally, the 5 things that really made me dig debate, to absolutely love it, were first of all, it's a team event. Everything you do on a speech and debate team generally, but especially in policy debate, it's as part of a team. You work, you live, you die, you win, you lose with someone else. You work together to achieve the things that you want to do, or to achieve the things that you hope to do, or whatever. And it is absolutely exhilarating to be there with someone else. Even if you're participating in the aspects of the activity that aren't just policy debate, say you're in humorous interpretation of literature, or you're in Lincoln Douglas debate, the quote-unquote solo events, what you find out is that if you want to be really good, you have to work with other people. You're still a part of a squad. Think of track and field. You might be a sprinter on your team, or you might be a shot putter on your team, but you're still working with the others to get better in practice. And ultimately, there is a team award at the end of the day, too. And so you're still working with other individuals. I actually once had a football player and wrestler. He was a varsity football player and a varsity wrestler. And at his senior year, or during his senior year, when the season was winding down and we were getting together as a team, he actually told the entire speech and debate team that he was envious of them because they had so much to look forward to. And he said that in all of his years of sports, and the camaraderie that you develop on a football team or even on a wrestling team, he said that didn't come anywhere close to comparing that which he experienced as part of the speech and debate team. That was a varsity athlete looking at speech and debate and saying, this is what he really saw as a team event, and where you built the bonds of friendship and you worked together and you succeeded together and everyone grew together. The second thing that I loved about debate is it's a unique competitive format. We bring everyone together in competitions. Large schools, small schools, urban schools, rural schools, public schools, private schools, men, women, you name it. We bring everyone together under a single umbrella for competitions. We do not divide ourselves out into different divisions, and that provides a unique opportunity to get to know other individuals, to get to know other people, to learn how they're approaching the activity. We don't artificially separate ourselves, and that makes it a lot of fun. The third thing that I fell in love with debate was its philosophical, social science, and political science focus. You really do engage specifically in those disciplines as you analyze a debate topic and you present your ideas in debate. But really, it's a cross-curriculum study. We are bringing in the math, the science, the language arts, and the political science, social sciences fields all together under a single umbrella to explore different ideas and to figure out how to present them in a meaningful way as we progress throughout the debate season. Fourth, you make some great friends on your debate teams. Some of the best friends that I have ever had in my life, if not the best friends that I've ever had in my life, have more or less revolved around this activity. Whether it's getting to know people from other teams, working with people from other teams, or the people on my own squad who we took trips together. In high school, I competed in Missouri, and we primarily competed locally, but that's still because I was from a small rural community. It still led to the opportunity to travel to Joplin and Springfield and Kansas City. And then when I went off to debate at the Air Force Academy in college, we traveled across the entire country. And you have high school kids and college kids traveling across the country, traveling across the world at the collegiate level sometimes. It is an absolutely fantastic experience. And then finally, the thrill of competition. I discovered that there is absolutely nothing like that moment when you're standing up in front of people and you're presenting the ideas that you have spent hours researching, you've spent hours dissecting. You've worked with your partner, you've worked with your teammates to understand those ideas and figure out how to present them, and you're standing up in front of an audience and you look out at the face of the judge. Maybe you're in the final round of a tournament, a district tournament or the national championships, and you see on the looks of the people's faces that acknowledgement of, oh my gosh, what you are doing right now is absolutely amazing. That head-to-head thrill of competition based on your intellect is a ton of fun. And it sounds kind of cheesy to the people who haven't done it before, but as someone who did participate in sports, I can tell you that I got just as much excitement out of competition in academic debate as I did in the world of track and field or soccer or you name it. It is a lot of fun. But one of the other things that you'll find as you take part in the activity, and one of the things that maybe I'll caution you on, is that you will constantly have peaks and valleys as you traverse this activity. You will have moments where you feel absolutely and utterly lost, and then you're going to have moments where you feel like you were on top of the world, that you know everything, that you were in charge, but then you're going to follow that up with an experience where you feel lost again. I can look back and use some of my own personal examples. My very first debate round ever was in October in Springfield, Missouri. My partner and I had gone into a debate round that was supposed to take about an hour and a half. I will tell you this, I had an amazing high school coach. Tim Gore is probably one of the best coaches ever as far as this activity is concerned, and he did a lot to prepare us. But I went into that room and I forgot how to speak, let alone how to talk intelligently about this topic that we'd been assigned, whether or not we should increase exploration beyond the Earth's mesosphere. I was completely lost. I couldn't remember what I was supposed to do. I was embarrassed. I really was clueless. And I wasn't the only one. The other three people in the room, my debate partner and the two people from on the opposing team, we were all lost. That debate round that was supposed to take an hour and a half or more took less than 20 minutes. Keep in mind the first speech was a pre-written 8-minute speech. We did a whole lot of nothing in that round. And our judge, he was a former debater, and I'm sure he was sitting at the back of the room wanting to slam his head into the desk because it was so bad. But you know what? He was amazing. When the round was over, he took a deep breath and he said, "Why don't we talk about this round a little bit? And take out your flows." Uh-oh. Another moment of feeling clueless. I know that Tej to Mr. Gore had told us about flows. I remembered our upper class debaters talking about flows, but when our judge said, "Get out your flows," I was completely lost. I turned to my debate partner with that blank look on my face, and she looked at me with a blank look and shrugged her shoulders. We turned and we looked at our opponents. They did the exact same thing. And our judge again takes a deep breath and he goes, "Your notes from the round, could you get them out? And then why don't you guys just come huddle up around me and we'll talk about what could have happened." And for the next 15 or 20 minutes, he sat there with us and talked us through what the round should have looked like. I was completely lost. I was embarrassed. I'm surprised I ever went back to another debate round or another tournament. But you know what? 3 tournaments later, I'm at my 4th tournament ever, and Sarah Garwood and I go into a tournament, and we're debating again in the novice division, and we've made it all the way to the final round of the tournament. We are debating for first place in the novice division, and boy did I feel good. But you know what? Normally in a debate round, it's you and your partner, the 2 people on the other side, and 1 judge. There are 5 people in the room, that's it. Well, I moved into the final round of the novice round, and I'm in a classroom that seats probably about 25 people, and there are about 60 people in the room. Okay, realistically, there were probably about 40 people in the room because they really did. They were sitting in desks, on countertops, on the floor. They were sitting everywhere. People from our team, people from our opponent's team, everyone was sitting there to listen to what we had to say. And I remember starting my rebuttal speech, my first negative rebuttal, and I looked out into the audience, and I was a little bit nervous because there were so many people there, and I wasn't sure what I was doing. But about 15-20 seconds into my speech, I locked eyes with Chad Mathis, a junior debater, a junior varsity debater, excuse me, he was a junior who was a varsity debater. And he was sitting on the floor at the back of the room, and we locked eyes. And he just kind of reaches up as I'm talking, grabs his chin, and gives me a nod, like, I know what you're talking about. At that moment, I was on top of the world. I was in charge. I knew I was winning that round. I knew I had important things to say, and I knew that I was making sense to everybody. I don't know if I really did or not. I don't know if I said anything intelligent in that round, but boy, did I feel in charge. Did I feel like I knew what was going on. Sarah and I ended up winning that round. I was on top of the world. Fast forward to my junior year in high school, my debate partner, Robert Koppel, and I, we ended up debating together for 2 years. We're in the spring semester. We've been having a lot of fun this year. We've been winning lots of trophies, placing at almost every event we've gone to. And we were competing on the lay judge circuits of Missouri. That means that most of our judges were parents. And so they weren't really familiar with the activity. And so we were always talking at a very conversational pace. To be totally honest, more slowly than I'm speaking to you right now. And we go into this round against some of our friends. Eric Slusher and Eddie Bull from Rockhurst High School up in Kansas City. And they competed with us a lot. At our local tournaments or our Missouri lay judge tournaments, but they also went to a private school and they had the opportunity to travel on the national circuit of debate. And we'd heard a little bit about the national circuit. We knew that people were running new types of arguments, things that we didn't necessarily do in our circuit, and that we'd heard that they used this delivery style called speed and spread. We didn't really know what that meant. We thought, oh, so they talk a little bit fast. And people made jokes about it and things like this. And remember, this is pre-internet era, so you couldn't even look it up on YouTube or anything. And so we go into this round, and we're looking forward to debating our friends. We've debated them 3 or 4 times this year. And the judge is Ken DeLauder, a debater at Missouri Southern State University, or back then it was Missouri Southern State College. I give the first affirmative constructive, and then one of our friends stands up from the negative and starts talking faster than I've ever heard a human being speak in my life. And Robert and I were absolutely lost. We had that deer in the headlights expression on our face. We had no idea what to do. We knew that we were absolutely getting slaughtered by them. Now what we didn't do was sit there and complain about it, get upset about it, whatever. We actually looked at it and went, how did they do that? I want to do that. And we worked hard. We started to figure out how you could counter speed in those instances where you went up against it. But the point being, we were lost at that point. And then we fast forward again to my senior year, and we're at the district championship tournament. And Robert and I are going into a round where if we win the round, we get to go to the national championships in the summer of my senior year, the summer after I graduate, right? We get to go to the national championship tournament if we win this round. And if we lose, well, we probably spend the summer at home before I go off to college. And my debate season is over. So the round all comes down to this. We win it, great. We lose it, my time in this activity, as far as I knew it at the time, was over. What made this round a little bit interesting, though, was we, in round 1 of the tournament, had hit the Joplin D team, so the 4th best team from Joplin High School. And we were on the affirmative, and we beat them. And Joplin had a close relationship with Missouri Southern University, Missouri Southern College, and so there were a couple of college debaters there, and they, were talking with the Joplin debaters to prepare them for the round. Well, in round 3, we're going affirmative again against the Joplin C team. So the third best team from Joplin. You can imagine that before that round started, the Missouri Southern debaters were actually talking to them and prepping them to get ready for that round. Well, Robert and I win that round. Fast forward a couple rounds, we hit the Joplin B team, the second best team from Joplin, and guess who was prepping them out before that round started? Then we move into the final round. At this point, like I said, we win, we go to nationals, we lose, we're done. Well, we hit the Joplin A team in the final round, and guess who was prepping them before that round started? Well, at this point, the Joplin A team was doing a pretty good job. They were beating us, to be quite honest, and throughout the negative block, which we'll talk about later, I knew that we were losing. I knew we were in trouble. Robert gets up to give his first affirmative rebuttal, so we're now 3 speeches from the end of the round, and as he's talking, I'm sitting there feeling kind of blue, feeling kind of upset, because I know that we're losing. And I know that our season is done. And I'm looking down at the sheet of paper, my flows, looking at the notes, and I have this thought about a minute into Robert's speech where I go, if Robert says this, we'll be okay. Well, just as that thought occurred to me and I completed the thought of we'll be okay, Robert says verbatim what I had just been thinking. At that moment, you could not have dissuaded me that there was any chance we were going to lose that round. I knew we would win. I looked up at Robert, I looked out at our 3 judges and whoever else was sitting out there, and I gave everyone a smile because I knew that we were going to win that round. And when I got to my 2AR, I let everyone know that we were winning that round and why. And it was an awesome, awesome feeling. The point of those stories, debate is a slew of emotions. It's part of the learning environment that you'll go through. You will have times where you feel lost and where you feel on top of the world, and then it'll all come crashing down again, and that's okay. Don't give up. Stick with it. Learn what you can. The activity is absolutely wonderful, and it makes the highs even better, to be quite honest. There are other reasons for you to be here, though. There are a number of academic benefits of taking part in the activity. Some schools will give you English credit for just being on your debate team. There have been a number of studies out there which show that people who participate in debate have more significant gains in reading level than their peers who aren't on the debate team. That you are exposed to a lot of literature, you read a lot over the course of debate, and you start then to understand or to learn how to understand that literature, how to make sense of it. It's also cross-curriculum. The education system in the West is, by design and out of necessity, divided into different fields of study. We have math, we have science, we have social studies, we have language arts. We divide everything out. And even within all of those disciplines, we subdivide even further. And when you're in a class, you really, for the most part, only look at that little sliver of the curriculum. But what we really know about the world is that we don't divide the real world into all of these different segments, that we bring things together all the time, that to truly understand and make sense of the world, you need to see the overlap between disciplines. And debate, out of necessity and out of design, brings together multiple fields of study under a single umbrella. And at least in my experience, it was one of the few places in high school that you ever really started to see how the different fields of study were actually connected. And so I think that debate is really eye-opening in that regard. But there have also been studies to show that test scores go up. The Yale report was done a couple decades ago now, but they found that students who participated in debate had larger gains in the ACT and the SAT than students who took prep courses for the ACT and SAT. Likewise, there was a Wall Street Journal article that interviewed college admissions offices of competitive universities like Harvard, Columbia, Yale, and they said, by and large, they evaluate participation in debate more highly than they do any other activity that you can participate in when you're in high school. And so it's really beneficial for students in that regard. Other studies have shown that students who participate in debate have higher graduation rates, have higher college admissions rates, have higher rates of graduation from college. You name it, a number of different studies support your participation in debate, saying that you get very real, tangible benefits out of the activity. There are also a number of awards available to you. There are district championship tournaments. Urban debate leagues have city championships. You have state championship tournaments. The National Speech and Debate Association, formerly the National Forensics League, has a number of different awards. They are the nation's largest national honor society for speech and debate activities. And if you participate in the activity and you demonstrate success, you can gain admission into that honor society. And that's really what universities and people who award scholarships are actually looking at, or whether or not you are a member of the NSDA or the NFL. The more successful you are, there are higher degrees of recognition that they hand out. They also have the opportunity to be an All-American and an academic All-American. You can compare your points in the NSDA to those of students at other schools, or even your school against your rival across town or whatnot. And then there are, of course, the national championship tournaments, and there are scholarships all available out there as well, just for participating in speech and debate. So there are a number of things out there which you can be recognized for participating in speech and debate. But what is debate really? I will tell you that I get very disappointed at seeing what passes for debate in contemporary society. If you turn on the news and look for a debate on TV, what you see isn't really debating. It's a lot of ad hominem attacks, attacking the person who's delivering a point. It's talking over other individuals. It's not really engaging ideas. Debate isn't any of that. Debate is actually the process of giving reasons in order to make better decisions. So it's reason giving for the purpose of decision making. That's what debate really is. It's a very logical process. It's the idea that we're going to explore our ideas, develop our ideas, and compare them to the ideas of someone else, so that in the end we can make better decisions on any particular issue. Now, I will tell you that debate itself, in any given debate round, you really are probably not going to find truth, because academic debate is a process. It's not a single event. So one debate round is not going to illuminate truth for you. But by taking part in the activity over the course of a season or a number of years, you will learn the skills that you need to understand the world, so that in whole you will start to understand the world better. Also, I think one thing to note about debate is that it's not oratory. It's not a contest of who sounds the best, who sounds the prettiest. Oratory can be important in that it informs your persuasiveness. How you deliver things affects how people understand your points. But debate isn't just about presenting your ideas in a pretty manner, so to speak. I actually personally think that policy debate in particular is the most accessible for students who are ESL or EFL, ELL, or even below proficient readers. And part of that stems from policy debate, as compared to all of the other formats, places the least emphasis on how you sound and the most emphasis on your logical ideas. And so students who are ELL, who may struggle with the language, can overcome that fairly easily, because what the judges are primarily evaluating is how well you're thinking. And so the important takeaway point of that is that the activity itself is focused on building your ideas. Now, but again, how you say things will impact how you're perceived and how you're understood. Debate's also not fighting. I already highlighted that or hinted at that earlier on. Debate isn't about getting into a disagreement with someone and refusing to acknowledge any valid points and those sorts of things. In fact, debate oftentimes is defined as much by agreement as it is about disagreement. My former boss at the University of Alaska Anchorage, Steve Johnson, used to love saying that. The debate is defined as much by agreement as it is about disagreement. There are a number of things that you have to agree, that you have to find agreement on with your opponents, whether it's the topic that you're going to debate, agreeing to meet your opponents at various places, on different issues to engage in some sort of clash. But even then, gifted debaters will also find that they can gain a lot of leverage in a debate round by granting or agreeing with the goals of their opponents and then showing how it's their side of the topic that actually best meets that goal. And so you have various different opportunities in a debate to have agreement with your opponents. There's also a paradox in debate that it's as much about competition as it is about cooperation. Yes, you're in competition with your opponents. You're trying to win a ballot. You're trying to win a round. You hope to win a trophy. You hope to win speaker awards. But at the same time, there's a lot of cooperation that goes on in a debate. Again, in part, that's because debate is defined as much by agreement as it is about disagreement. But in part, it's also you're working with a debate partner. You have teammates, and you'll find that the best of the best don't hesitate to help other individuals. I don't know how many times throughout college or as a coach, when my students have gone up against some of the best teams in the country, at the end of the round or even sometimes before the round, their opponent actually turned and offered assistance and said, you know what, your case would be a lot better if you included this. You could actually rework that and do this, and then it would be a lot more persuasive. It would be a lot better. And so you will find that people actually develop a sense of community and work together in the activity. It's an absolute wonderful thing. Okay, so that's what debate is. But then, what does debate look like? What are the rules of the game? Because everything has to have rules, right? Well, the rules of policy debate, actually, there's only one. It's pretty simple. And the only rule of policy debate is that there are no rules. You can say anything, you can do anything in a debate round, as long as you can be persuasive to the judge, as long as you can do a better job of convincing the judge that what rule you want to change, or what rule you want to add to the debate, or what rule you want to eliminate from the debate, as long as you can do a better job of providing the rationale behind that idea better than your opponents can, then you can change the game. You can change what the game looks like. And you should always keep that in mind, that we will present all kinds of different ideas to debaters and say that you have to do this or you have to do that in a debate round, but the reality is there are no rules. You can debate the rules in debate. Some of the defining features of policy debate, though, are that we have two-person teams. You have an affirmative team with 2 people and a negative team with 2 people, and at the end of the round, the judge is going to vote for either the affirmative or the negative team. The primary focus of policy debate would be those areas encapsulated by political science or the social sciences. Government, economics, history comes into play. Anything that would fall within the political science or the social science fields is primarily what we're talking about in policy debate. But at the end of the day, you're actually answering a question. Does a course of action, a plan, or proposal lead to more good than bad? If it leads to more good than bad, then the judge should vote for the affirmative. If it leads to more bad than good, then the judge should vote for the negative. It's a simple question, and that is, in sum, what policy debate is. I do also put up there the question, should the government implement that solution or that plan? And I put that on there because most, if not all, policy debate resolutions or policy debate topics are phrased such that the United States federal government should do something. So we know if the government should take that course of action based on whether or not the action would be more beneficial or more detrimental. And then we debate one topic for the entire year. The topics that we get in policy debate, though, are quite broad, so there's a lot of variability within that debate topic. There are a lot of different affirmative proposals that can be advocated by the affirmative team. Likewise, there are a lot of tangential issues. Just because you have a debate topic that mentions environment in the topic doesn't mean that you won't also talk about global leadership, the effect on the military, the effect on economics, because all of these issues that we talk about are impacting other issues as well. Policy debate is also evidence-based. I do think that a lot of beginning debaters get really hung up on this term, evidence-based. It is true, we do say that policy debate is evidence-based, and we mean that in a couple of different ways. One is that the first two speeches in particular for policy debate use a lot of quotations. It's very heavily built upon lengthy quotations from various authors. And that provides a solid foundation for the debate. That doesn't mean that everything you say in a debate has to be carded or have a piece of evidence associated with it. You are welcome to, and in fact should, incorporate your own analysis, your own logic into the debate round. You do not just have to read cards. But for the most part, those first two speeches are comprised almost entirely of quoted evidence. I also think it's important to point out to folks that evidence doesn't just mean cards or quotations, that you have the opportunity and the ability to use your own logic and analysis, to use analogies and metaphors. Those are all ways of presenting evidence in a debate round. It doesn't have to come from an author in every single case. And then finally, it's a group effort. Obviously, you work with a team, with a partner, but you also benefit the most when you work with the larger team or even the other people on your local circuit. Policy-based frameworks are primarily concerned, like I said, evaluating whether or not a plan or a proposal leads to more good than bad. But some of the questions that you'll answer then are, is there actually a problem? What problem are we talking about? Also, why does the problem exist? Does my solution reduce the problem? Are there additional benefits to choosing that course of action? And then are there unintended negative effects? All of those questions come into play when you're evaluating a policy decision. Okay, so that's what policy debate as a framework is or looks like. To be a little bit more specific, to just talk about the 5 elements of debate. Anytime you have an academic debate, there are opportunities for 5 different things to occur. You construct arguments, meaning you create them, you build them, you make them understandable to the judge. There are opportunities for clarification, where after you're done constructing an argument or building an argument, your opponent has an opportunity to ask clarification questions. That's important because you cannot have a debate if you don't understand what your opponents are talking about. And so we build into academic debates the opportunity for debaters to ask clarifying questions from one another. You also have deconstructive efforts. Your opponents have built an idea, now you try and tear it down, try and deconstruct it. But then you should have an opportunity to rebuild that argument. Once your opponents have attacked your idea, you should have the ability or the opportunity to rebuild and reconstruct and fill in gaps. And then finally, the 5th element of debate is an opportunity to frame the debate, to provide perspective to all the different ideas that have been discussed and figure out what the most important arguments are, what the most important issues are, and why. Okay, again, I'm going to have to thank my former boss at UAA, Steve Johnson, because he built these slides primarily to teach judges how to evaluate debates, but I think they're helpful in understanding the different phases of the debate or the different elements. You could have a debate topic such as the U.S. federal government should ban tobacco products, and you can imagine that that debate topic has created a playing field where there are arguments in favor of banning tobacco and there are arguments in favor of not banning tobacco. But then you're going to have to construct arguments in the debate. And you can imagine both teams making an effort, or one or the other teams, excuse me, building arguments around these 3 questions. The affirmative is going to develop arguments about public health. Both the affirmative and the negative will probably build arguments about the economic consequences of banning tobacco products. The affirmative might show, or excuse me, the negative team or the con team might show that banning an entire industry harms people in a number of different ways as you take away that element of the economic sector. But the affirmative might build arguments talking about the hidden economic costs of tobacco, meaning that the health care related topics, or excuse me, expenses, costs that you don't necessarily see initially. And then the negative is probably going to develop some arguments or construct some arguments around smokers' rights, about individual rights in our society. Okay, so you construct the arguments. After you've constructed those arguments, there's going to be an opportunity for clarification. That's the cross-examination period. Cross-examination is not an opportunity for you to argue with your opponents. It's not an opportunity for you to develop your own ideas and those types of things. It's an opportunity to seek clarification. Find out what they were actually arguing. Find out why they were saying the things that they were, or what they were actually saying. Use that opportunity to understand what they've done. And then you're going to have clash back and forth. And this is where you start deconstructing your opponent's ideas. You're going to be pushing back and forth in the debate, tearing down your opponent's ideas and rebuilding your ideas that your opponents have attacked, so that we can see who has won each of these individual issues in the debate. And then you engage in elements of framing to prioritize those issues. And so you're going to make, in this particular example, you can see that issue number 2, the affirmative team, did the best job, or they spent a lot of time showing that that second issue was the most important issue in the debate. They helped it to occupy the most space in the judge's mind, so to speak, made it most relevant to the judge. And so at the end of the debate, if you had that banning tobacco, you might have something that looks like this. The affirmative team won the public health debate. The negative team won the other 2 issues in the round, smokers' rights and economic consequences. That should also be enlightening for you. Debate isn't about who wins the most number of arguments. It's about who wins the most important arguments in the debate. And so even though the negative team won 2 of the big issues in the debate, the affirmative team won the most important issue. And just kind of looking at this diagram of how the arguments developed, I would say that the affirmative team probably won that debate. Beyond the debate itself, though, policy debate, like I said, is unique in that you work with a debate partner. And so I do want to highlight a few points of advice for you as you develop in the activity. You should separate your friendship from the debate world. If you're going to debate with someone who's a good friend of yours, it is important that you recognize that your friendship and debate are not necessarily the same thing. When your partner gets upset with you in a debate round, it's not because they hate you as an individual. When you get upset about something your partner did, don't let that impact how you feel about them as an individual. Because there are going to be, like I said, you're going to lose. You may hit debate slumps, but that shouldn't be the end of the world for you. Some words of advice, like I said, always try and work harder than your partner. One of the biggest reasons why partnerships fall apart is that when you start lacking in success, you may start looking for reasons of blame, or you try looking for ways to assign blame. And of course, it's never going to be your fault. It's got to be somebody else's. But I will say that one of the things that you can do is just try and work harder than your partner. Kind of the subtext to that, though, is that you should find a debate partner who wants similar things out of the activity that you do. They're wanting to put in similar amounts of work that you put in. It's good to argue and debate, but don't fight. You should engage in discussions about the arguments. You should disagree with your debate partner before the tournament starts or between rounds. You should engage in debates on the arguments that you're going to develop, because then you will understand them better. But you should not fight about them. You want to actually have meaningful debates with them, not engage in fighting. And fighting or arguing in the middle of the debate round is a recipe for disaster. Try not to snap at your partner. Lashing out at your partner ruffles feathers, makes it so that you don't want to work with other individuals. And so try very hard not to snap at them. The bottom line, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Treat them the way that you want them to treat you. Also, when you start working together, plan a work schedule. That's important for a number of different reasons. One, to make sure that you stick to it and you actually do some work. Because I remember so many times that when my partners and I, or teammates and I, would get together, if we didn't have a work schedule, if we didn't have a list of goals, things that we were trying to accomplish, a lot of times it would turn into a goof-off session. And that's okay if that's what you want out of it. But if you want to really focus and bear down, then create a schedule, create a list of goals that you want to develop. And then last, don't ever talk behind your partner's back. Word is going to get back to him or back to her, so don't talk behind their back. If you've got a problem, bring it to them. Talk to them directly. And then finally, just some helpful hints for in-round debates. Advocate something. Take a stand. You the worst thing you can ever do in a debate, or one of the worst things you can ever do in a debate, is to be wishy-washy, to, well, I'm not sure, evade, dodge questions. You want to have an advocacy. You want to tell your opponents, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm arguing. Judges will appreciate it. You will ultimately debate better if your opponents know where you're coming from. So take that stand. Get organized before you begin speaking. Too many debaters, when they're starting out, stand up at the podium before they've gotten all of their notes in order, before they've gotten all of their evidence together or their thoughts together, and they just try and start going. And that's a recipe for disaster. You end up starting and going and stuttering and in awkward pauses. So get yourself organized before you start speaking. Don't lose sight of the big picture. It's okay to concede little points. It's okay to concede big points. Those ideas, those issues are recoverable. So don't get so hung up on something small, something minimal, that you lose track of the bigger picture and end up sinking yourself in the debate. I put stay on target, nice Star Wars reference for you, because a lot of times too, as you're maybe losing sight of the big picture in the debate, that you miss the broader goal, but also in terms of staying organized in the speech, that a lot of debaters, when they're starting out, will have things pop into their head about an issue that they talked about earlier, and so they jump over to that issue, and then they come back to where they were before, and everybody gets confused when you do that. It doesn't make sense. It gets confusing. It's hard for us to keep track of things. I mean, think about reading a book. If you're reading a story, authors don't jump back and forth between various parts of the story because it gets confusing. Or if they do, it's very intentional and very carefully thought out as to why they're switching around, and the process of switching back and forth is actually telling a broader story, painting a specific picture that the author or the screenwriter has wanted to do. But for the most part, when you're in a debate round, you want to treat one issue at a time in the debate, complete that issue, and then move on to the next idea so that people don't get lost. Those are just basic helpful hints in any given debate round that I think are good for you. But then finally, the last set of hints that I want to touch base on are hints for winning the big one. Whatever the big one debate is for you, whether it's your to win the last round of the season, whether it's to win it all at the district tournament or the state tournament or the national championship tournament, whatever the big one is for you, and it's different for everybody, and you might have multiple quote-unquote big ones over the course of your entire career, but some things that you need to do, or things that will help you. One is to know your positions. Whatever arguments you're going to run, you need to understand those arguments. The best debaters win because they know the issues better than their opponents do. So if you understand the arguments that you tend to run in debates, then it's going to be difficult for your opponents to beat you. You also need to know your files. Know where the research is, so that when your opponents say something, you know where to find the card that answers it, or where to find a front line that answers it. Know where things are, but also know what's in them. I don't know how many times that I've worked with students, brilliant students, great debaters, who they would come and they would say, well, how do I answer this? And I'm like, well, you've actually got a couple of really good cards in your files that already say this. And they're like, we do? And it's like, yeah, it's in the front line that we photocopied for the whole team earlier in the season. Oh, I guess I should have read through there more closely. So know your files, know what's there. You can't use it if you don't know it exists. Plan ahead and think strategically. Try not to just take each round as it progresses. I mean, it's important to take each round as it comes, but in terms of any given debate, you want to have a strategic plan where you want to be when you get to the final rebuttal of the debate, and start working towards that goal early in the debate. It will put you leaps and bounds ahead of your opponents. Find a partner with whom you click. Find someone who you really can work with well, so that you have that element of synergy in the debate. I mean, think about, I told you earlier about my debate with Robert in the final round of the district championship to qualify to nationals. where I thought an idea and then he said it verbatim. Part of that came from the fact that Robert and I had known each other since he was 1 year old and I was 2, and we'd been debating together for 2 solid years. We knew each other really, really well, and so we started to think how the other person thought, and it really enabled us to do well. And then finally, discover your best strength in debate and exploit it. That doesn't mean that you ignore your weaknesses, because you also want to try and minimize those weaknesses, to develop them into strengths. But ultimately, whatever you're best at, make sure that you take advantage of that in debate rounds. Whatever it is, use it to your advantage. Don't forget that that strength is there. You want to take advantage of it. Just like Peyton Manning uses his knowledge of football to be an amazing quarterback for the Denver Broncos. He analyzes game film. He analyzes different formations and their history in football, and he takes all of that and uses it. He doesn't ignore it. He exploits it. That's what makes him an excellent quarterback, or it's part of what makes him an excellent quarterback. Even when he was recovering from surgery and his arm strength wasn't quite where it was, he used his greatest strength as an advantage. He capitalized on his knowledge of the game to be better, and you should do the same thing as a debater. Find out what your strength is and use it. Develop it. Take advantage of it in rounds. If you do all of those things, I think it will set you up to be able to get out of the activity what you really want to get, or to win the rounds that really matter. But again, debate is more than just about winning and losing. It is a process. It's about a sense of community. It's about preparing you for the future. It is a wonderful activity. And I wish you the best, and I hope that you really get to maximize your experience in the activity.